Hey guys, I don't often release two teachings in a week, mostly because I'm a mom and I work. But on the 30th, Jesus came and he spoke some things to me, and he said I was to share these things, and specifically today. So I try to always only say what he is telling me to say and share it when he tells me to share it. Um, so on the 30th in the evening, I was spending my time with him, and I was really just enjoying him like I do most of the time. I have times in the morning and the evening when I just enjoy his presence and am really focused on just loving him and hearing anything he wants to speak. And then I have times of Bible reading throughout the day. And then I have times where I'm praying specifically for specific things. But this was my evening time to just enjoy him before bed. And I asked him something that I often do. I said, "What do you want to talk about?" And he said, "My churches." So I've recorded this entire conversation. I do, when there's important conversations, I do record the entire conversation. And so I'm going to be reading specifically what he said because it's important. I said, "Okay, what would you like to tell me about your churches?" And he said, "I would like you to give a message to my churches." And so I asked him what he wanted to say. And he said, "Harlot has begun an open assault against my bride." And then he said after that, "I am coming to take back my bride." And I said, "Jesus, that sounds like Revelation 19:11. And he said, "That is what Revelation 19 is about. My vengeance against the enemy that has come against my bride." Now, this is very interesting that he came and spoke this to me, because just the day before, maybe that day, actually it was that day, that morning, he had me release a teaching on the harlot spirit from Revelation 17. This was something that he had begun teaching me or speaking to me about earlier in the month, and then throughout the month of October. And he had come on the 25th and began teaching me about this particular spirit. This is the spirit that I believe the church is battling, and that we have largely overlooked, that we are battling this spirit. I do believe it is a spirit that we need to start coming against more directly. And this spirit, at the end of the end times, at the end of the tribulation, this spirit is actually going to be addressed, and God's judgment is coming against this spirit, whose assignment is to both literally take out specific people in the body of Christ who are devoted to Jesus, who are sent to reveal Jesus and be examples for us to imitate and follow. And its assignment is to deceive people into believing that they have a true, authentic love for Jesus, when actually it has deceived them and corrupted them into loving themselves more and loving the world. So there will be judgment that will come against this spirit, and it will be against the spirit and then also the world system. That harlot, it represents both a spirit and a world system. Now, harlot is mentioned as a woman. It says that the woman, the mystery is that the woman is harlot, but harlot is a spirit, just like Jezebel is often referred to as a woman, but it is a spirit that can operate in a man or a woman. I encourage you, if you have not watched that teaching, that you go back and watch that teaching on the harlot spirit. So, knowing that that had just been released earlier that day, this got my attention. And so I asked Jesus, what else do I need to know? And he says, I am coming back soon. Be ready. And so I asked him 2 more times, thinking that he was actually going to tell me something else. And each time when I said, okay, because at first I didn't really fully pick up on what he was saying. It's like, okay, what else do I need to know? All 3 times he would only say, I am coming back soon. Be ready. So by the 3rd time, it began to sink in to me what he was saying. And so I asked him, what does it look like to be ready? He said, you are in love with me and you are loving others well. And this, of course, is what Jesus said as the first and greatest commandment, is that we are loving God with all of our heart, with all of our soul, with all of our mind, and with all of our strength. And then Jesus said that we are to love others as he has loved us. So he's telling us here, this is what it looks like to be ready for my return. You're loving me and you're loving others as I have told you, as I've given you the example for you to follow. So I asked him, I said, Jesus, there's so many things we are to be doing. Like we should be going out and praying for people and evangelizing, and we should be going and praying for the homeless and loving on the homeless and caring for them and caring for the poor. I said, what do you say about all these things? And he said, you will need to do these things to be proven to be my disciples, which again is the words of Jesus. He said, my disciples are to be known by their love, by their love. You know, if you're ever talking to God and he's telling you things that are not in the word, you may not be talking to God. You could be talking to another spirit, or you could be, your own mind can be answering you. But when I talk to God, he is pretty much always speaking the word. I said, Lord, what about people who are doing these things in their church? They're doing them, but they're doing them only in their church. And he said, it is not for the church, but the individual. And the reason is, as he said, this is a sign that you're truly a disciple of Jesus. You cannot know and be one with God, who is love, and not have a love for people, a love for the world that he gave himself to die for, so that they could all come to him, so that every single one could come and be reconciled to him, reconciled to the Father. If this piece is missing in your life, if you're missing a love for others, you need to stop and ask God why. And you need to ask him to fill you with love for others. And I would encourage you to watch the previous teaching, because that is what that spirit does. It causes you to have a love for yourself, for the things you want to get for yourself. It's all very self-focused. It's basically, Jesus is here to provide everything I need and desire for myself. And it'll even try to wrap it around ministry and good things for God, but it's really not that. The core desire is really what you desire. So if you're struggling with that, I encourage you to watch the previous teaching. I then asked him, what other question do I need to ask to be ready? And he said, ask me what it looks like to love me. So I said, Jesus, what does it look like to love you? And he said, in loving me, there is no mixture. There's no mixture in loving Jesus. You have become, as the disciples, as the apostles were, so abandoned in your love for him that nothing else in this world matters. It doesn't mean you don't have things of the world. You're not given things of the world. You're not being used by God. But the thing is, if everything were stripped away from you in a moment and you were left with nothing but sitting in a room alone by yourself with God, you would be just as happy and content as you were with all the things that you had. There's no mixture. You hate sin. You hate sin in your own life. You hate it. And you continually come to him, asking him to change your heart, asking him to make you more like him, asking him to root out any sin, anything, any mixture in you, anything that is not like his love, because you so love his love. You desire to reflect his love. You desire to reflect your bridegroom. I asked him again after that, what else do I need to know? And he said, I am coming soon. I asked him again, what do I need to know? Anything else? And he said, I am coming soon. And so I asked him a third time, is there anything else you want to say to me? And he said, I am coming very soon. And when he said that, there was such a weight behind what he said that I began to realize what he was telling me, both from the message from before, what he began showing me, and here in this. And so I asked him, I said, Jesus, how soon? And he said, very soon. I think one of the greatest tactics of the enemy would be to make us all believe we have more time than we do. And in fact, Jesus says this in Matthew 24. He says around verse 37 or 38, he begins talking and he's saying, it's going to be, when I come back, it's going to be like it was in the days of Noah. People are going to be eating and drinking and marrying and having their mind on all the things of the world. And then all of a sudden the flood came. It started raining. They were mocking Noah. They were mocking his family, the people that were preparing for what was coming, thinking it either wouldn't happen or they had plenty of time. And Jesus said, this is what it's going to be like. This is what's going to be like. And so, as he said that very soon, I just was stuck there for a moment. You know, there's sometimes where he speaks something and there's such a weight with it, you can't respond, you can't move. You just have to sit for a second and let it settle into your soul. And so I asked him, or I started talking to him and saying, Jesus, there's so many that are not ready. There's so many that are not ready. There's so many that are deceived. Even believers. Jesus says on the last day, on that day, many will come to me and say, Lord, Lord, look at all these things we did. And he's going to say, away from me, I never knew you. They said, Lord, Lord, twice. They were sure that he was their Lord. In Matthew 25, he talks about people that were not using their talents and people who were not loving others. And they were sure they knew Jesus. But they don't come in to be with Jesus. And so I want to be sure that we're ready. And since this time, since this moment, churches that I know he has called me to pray for, and then the body as a whole, I am beginning to change my prayers, and I'm just going to be praying this, Lord, make sure we're ready. Make us ready. Make us all ready, because none of us want to miss that day. I want to go to you, go with you to Jeremiah 1. This is a place, Jeremiah is a place that he has spoken to me out of for many, many years. I believe it was maybe first. Either he spoke it first and then John Paul Jackson confirmed it, or maybe John Paul Jackson took me there. I can't remember. It's been so many years ago. I'd have to go back and look. But Jeremiah 33:3 has been such a mark of my life with him. Calling out to him, and he answers us, and he shows us things. If we'll just have a hunger, not even for things like this. I wasn't asking for things like this. You know, when I take that verse, Jeremiah 33:3, I take it and I often say, Jesus, I'm crying out to you. Show me things about you that I don't know. Show me mysteries of your love that I don't know. This should be our first desire, is I want to know him. I want him revealed to me continually as I'm walking in my relationship with him. But Jeremiah 1:11 and 1:12 is two verses. There are two verses that the Lord has returned me to continually for several years. Jeremiah opens and the Lord is telling Jeremiah who he is, and then he tells Jeremiah what he's going to do with him. And then in Jeremiah 1:11 he says, moreover, the word of the Lord came to me saying, Jeremiah, what do you see? And he said, I see a branch of an almond tree. And then the Lord said to Jeremiah, you have seen well, for I am ready to perform my word. So many people take this verse and they quote it and say good things. I'm ready to perform my word. What Jeremiah had seen correctly, what the Lord was ready to perform, was his judgment. It was not a good word. It says in verse 16, I will utter my judgments against them concerning all their wickedness, because they have forsaken me, burning incense to other gods and worshiping the works of their own hands. Therefore, prepare yourself and arise and speak to them all that I command you. So the previous word that he gave was about the judgment against the spirit of harlot. And here again, he's talking about his judgment. And he says against them concerning all their wickedness, because they have forsaken me. When you turn your love to yourself, your self-focus, getting your own desires to the things of the world, you have forsaken God. And he's giving, I believe, a message ahead of the judgment that is coming. Ahead of the judgment that is coming. Of repent and turn back to him. Because he doesn't want his judgment to come towards any people. He wants it on that spirit. There's another word he's had me in. In Amos. He took me to Amos yesterday. When he did, I was like, Lord, because I feel like I had closed the book there with he and I on Revelation 17. And so I asked, Lord, where do you want me to read now? And he said, Amos. And I was like, can we go to Song of Solomon? Like, can we go to Song of Songs? Can we go to some of the verses, the chapters that are not so much on judgment? But that is not what he had in mind. So he took me to Amos, and there were two verses here that were highlighted. In chapter 1, verse 10, he said, I will not turn away its punishment, because he has pursued his brother with the sword and cast off all pity. His anger tore perpetually. and he kept his wrath forever. And the Lord was highlighting to me the judgment, the punishment that will actually come upon people, believers, who this is what they are living in. And as I mentioned in the previous teaching, this can often be the harlot spirit, that it so hates the love of God in another. And so it has them just in continual wrath and anger against people for really no reason, but also if someone has wronged you, that and you're not willing to forgive them as God has forgiven you, then this is something that you need to be concerned of. Jesus says, if you do not forgive others, that you will not be forgiven. So we are to forgive as Jesus has forgiven us. And then in Amos 2, verse 4, another one that he highlighted, I will not turn away its punishment for these people, because they have despised the law of the Lord and have not kept his commandments. Their lies lead them astray, lies which their fathers have followed. So as the judgment comes against this harlot spirit, those that are not in repentance for things that they have done, there are people that have despised the law of the Lord and not kept his commandments. And their own lies have not only led them astray, but their own lies also, their fathers, the people over them, their mentors, whoever, they have followed these lies. They believe these lies that these people were saying. If that is you, this is the time to turn from that. After I talked with him for some time, I asked him, what do you want your church to look like? What do you want church to look like? And this so touched his heart. I'm not sure why. Maybe a lot of people don't ask that, but that's, to me, seemed like a very reasonable question. What do you want your church to look like? He said, I want church to be a place where I am loved and where people love each other. And again, this is just what he said was the greatest commandment, is to love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind, with all of your strength, with all of your being, everything, every day, every moment of your life. Your heart, your mind, your soul, your strength is directed towards loving God. And then loving others as he has loved you. After that, I said, Jesus, is there anything else I need to know? And he said, I am coming back soon. I am not someone to talk about timelines or whatever, all this. I'm not focused on these things. I'm really never focused on this. I'm just focused on loving Jesus and becoming more like Jesus. I don't think that needs to be our focus. I think whether we have years or months or a few hours, our focus needs to be on loving him and becoming like him, like his love to others. So I want to encourage you, if you're coming across this and you do not know Jesus, that you begin crying out to Jesus to save you. You begin crying out to Jesus to reveal himself to you. You ask the Father to grant you to come to Jesus and get a Bible, begin reading, asking Jesus to reveal himself to you. It is about a relationship. It is not about a one-time prayer that you pray. If you're a believer and you are hearing some of these things and think, I really need to maybe focus on some of this, then I encourage you first to watch the previous teaching on the harlot spirit, because that is the spirit that the church is facing right now. And I encourage you to Begin asking Jesus to fill you with his love for him and for others, his authentic love for him and for others. Begin asking him to give you love for the lost. He has such a great love for the lost. You know, Jesus is continually interceding for you before the Father. God, who is love, he loved each one of us so much that he sent his son, his most precious possession, to come and die for us so we can be with him. And his son, now knowing that he has paid the price, knowing that we can be with him forever, for all of eternity, is before the Father, continually crying out for you and for me, that we be found authentically in love with Jesus and others. That's what he's interceding for. He's not interceding for you to get a new car or a new house or even be used in ministry. Do you understand? He is interceding that you love him authentically and that you love others as he has loved you. And then as you do that, anything ministry-wise will happen, and it'll be beautiful and pure. And all hell will come against it, but it'll be beautiful and pure. You know, something that he recently revealed to me is that Jesus, who died, went through such great torment for us all to be with him in eternity. He hears the cries of those who did not make that choice, or that thought that they did, but when they got to the end of their life, they realized they did not. He hears the cries of these people. And so I can imagine that he, even more so, hearing that, is crying out with all that he has to the Father. Help them. Help them. I know what it is like. I was there. I know what it is like. And it's just as simple as turning. It's turning. It doesn't matter if you lose everything in this life. But if you turn and you find yourself there before your beloved at the end, it will all be worth it. It'll all be worth it. If you're someone that's coming across this and you maybe disciple others, you have others that are following you, I want to encourage you, stop teaching about things that don't have an eternal weight. Stop. Get your focus off of things that are listed there in Matthew 24. You know, they're eating and drinking and being merry, and they are worrying about marrying. Let's get all of our attention and focus. In these last days, all of us know, so many people are talking about this. We're all watching things that are happening around the world, and we know things are being positioned for something. Get your attention in these last days to being sure that everyone in the sound of your voice knows Jesus, knows how to authentically love him, and are loving others as Jesus has loved them. You know, after talking with him and processing all of the concern for those that don't know him, or that think that they do think that they're good, but they've maybe gotten off, I was able to return to the excitement. You know, as believers who know where we're going, who we're going to be with, we should be excited at the return of Jesus. We should be expectant for that. We should be crying out for his return. Just thinking about that day that we're going to see him coming, our beloved coming, and getting caught up in the wonder and the awe and the love of the fact that he's going to be here with us. We're going to see him tangibly with our eyes. That should be something, a day that you're looking forward to. But we have to look forward to that day, making sure that we are ready.